take those in a little bit. Right now, we're going to jump into Throwback Thursdays. All right, you guys, Throwback Thursdays. It is that time of the week again where we take a film not from this year, not a recent film, and we're going to go back and revisit it. We're going to tell you our thoughts, our feelings, what's in our heart, what's on our mind, and, kind of rehash things out a little bit. First time around isn't always necessarily the best time around, and this time around we are reviewing the film Suicide Squad, the 2016 version of Suicide Squad. Now, I remember when this film first came out, Chris. I left the theater excited. I wasn't as excited for like an event, like on the same level as like an Avengers movie, but I liked the film. It left me with positive feelings. I know that director David Ayer had to go back and do some heavy reshoots. They had to infuse the first time around, the film just didn't have like a light enough tone. It was a little too dark. It was a little too dire. And so they filmed some reshoots to insert into the film to kind of give it a lighter tone, a little bit more lighthearted. They infused various musical choices. And yeah, when I left the theater, I liked it. And I previously reviewed it at like a 70%. I thought it was a good film. Having rewatched it, James Gunn's Suicide is coming out next year. DC Fandom just made a big, huge hullabaloo over, the new cast. There was a behind-the-scenes trailer production, the whole thing, which inspired me to go back and revisit the original Suicide Squad. I have decided this is a bad film. 4 years ago, I thought it was fun. I didn't think it was terrible, but I thought it was a fun movie. I thought it was decent. I thought it was good. 4 years to have something sit with you and change your mind drastically is exactly what this movie did for me. Chris, when was the last time you saw Suicide Squad, and what are your general thoughts of it?
I watched it in the theaters, and I've watched it on television since. I think I even watched it maybe at the very beginning of the pandemic, maybe back in March. I hated the film when it first came out, and then as far as like a TV watch, I thought it was a fun distraction. Oh, bless you.
Oh, thank you.
I thought it was a fun distraction. I think, and a lot of it is, I think the stakes were so high for Suicide Squad the first time. I really liked that property, that it just felt completely mismanaged, and that seemed like a property that they should not have a problem getting right. I guess, I know, I've never done a film. So that, even though there's people that I really like as actors, like I'm a big Will Smith fan.
Who isn't?
I think Will Smith is, if you bring in Will Smith, I think it's harder to do a group ensemble film. It's doable, but the director and the studio and everyone has to agree that is what is going to happen. I think Marvel did, a pretty good job in Avengers of taking some pretty big stars like Robert Downey Jr. and Chris Evans, and ultimately Scarlett Johansson, and like it doesn't feel like, it feels like an ensemble.
They make sure
piece.
that they had the chemistry before casting them in the film.
Right. And that, to me, that film didn't have any real chemistry. I thought Will Smith, as far as the director and the writing pushing him in a different direction to be Deadshot, it kind of had that, you could have basically slotted that character in a lot of big premiere films that he's done, and that kind of thing, what I always call the moment where Will Smith goes, oh, hell no.
Right.
That thing where, that moment. And it just, Will Smith is fine. He's always good. Yeah. It just, I felt like he dominated too much of it. And Deadshot, although is an interesting character, he's a guy that never misses with guns. And when you start elevating to the level of Suicide Squad CGI crazy stuff, it's hard to really grasp that the two characters out of Suicide Squad that are going to save the day are going to be the Harley Quinn with her mallet and Deadshot
Well,
with his
that
guns.
brings up a really great point that I've been sitting on for weeks. You know, I've been wanting to talk about this ever since we rewatched it. You can replace every single character, including Harley Quinn, including Deadshot. Replace every single character from this film with any other character that you want from the DC comic universe, and nothing has changed. The story of the film, nothing has changed. None
Right.
of the characters mean anything. None of the characters matter. None of the characters make a difference for who they are. Like Deadshot as Deadshot doesn't make a difference because he's Deadshot. He makes a difference because he's a filler. He's a character that needs to serve a purpose, and it does. Like, you could have Harley Quinn in the role of Deadshot. You could have Joker in the role of Deadshot. Like, it doesn't matter who you cast in that role, or not in that role, but in that position, like as the leader of the team. So you have Rick
Right.
Flag as the leader of the Suicide Squad, and then you had Deadshot as kind of like the number two. Doesn't matter. It really genuinely didn't matter who they put in any of that stuff. Anyway, guys, we are going to start breaking the movie down for you in terms of, you know, acting and directing and writing and all that stuff. So let's jump into acting real quick. Chris, the acting of the film, I thought was pretty bad. It was mediocre at best. I think it was sub-average. Even Margot Robbie and Will Smith were the two charismatic people on screen, and neither one of them delivered. It just kind of, like, when you look at the new Harley Quinn movie, what is it? Birds of Prey and the Fantabulous Emancipation of One Harley Quinn is the entire mouthful of a title for that film. I liked it. I thought it was a fun movie. I thought it was engaging. I thought Margot Robbie did a really... She was also in creative control of the character and the story. And I think both of them worked. Now, I know there are a few people out there that don't like that film. I do. But her characterization of Harley Quinn was so much better than what it was in Suicide Squad. Do you have a different take on the general acting of the film? Or do you feel that it was substandard?
I thought the acting was bad, but it's also one of those things where I guess I do sort of, on some level, I don't know if this is right. It's hard to, sometimes when you see actors that are actually, you know, they're good, consistent actors. I think Will Smith is a great actor consistently, if he especially, and he gets pushed if he has a good director. I think Margot Robbie is a consistently, really surprisingly excellent actor as well. And it almost, I felt like part of it was writing and direction, because when I first watched Suicide Squad, I thought that the acting was generally pretty bad, but I thought Will Smith was fine. He was just not pushed. He was doing what he does. And I thought Margot Robbie's acting was actually quite good. I thought she was good in the first one. I liked her acting in the second Harley Quinn film, to your point, probably even better. I didn't love that film, but I didn't hate it. Yeah. I liked it. Sure. I liked it better than Suicide Squad, which is, you know, not that high a bar. But I did think that part of the problem, though, with Margot Robbie's character is the hand she got dealt. I kind of feel the same way a little bit with the way that some of the characters went. She got dealt a character in an abusive relationship that really didn't get to have an arc, with a Joker character that was only in and out. You know, and it's the same thing like with the Joker. Like, I like Jared Leto. I think he's a good actor. I felt like I almost feel bad for him, and I don't know that any of this is justified, but I almost felt bad for him in a way that if he'd never been in Suicide Squad and they just did the Batman film, I almost think he could have pulled off the Joker. He's a good actor. I wasn't in love with the look, but the way that they dealt the Joker in that film was just like a bad movie video, a music video, just like a lot of that film was shot. And he was just doing bad dialogue and bad situations. We got to know nothing about the Joker, and it messed him up, because they never were going to continue that Joker by the horrible portrayal that he got in the film. And it's hard for me to blame him based on the dialogue and the short amount of time that he was in the movie.
Well,
completely.
guys, we have some very strong opinions about everyone's acting on the overall whole. Just kind of, it was up, it was down. Some of it was bad, some of it was okay. So for all of those reasons, we are giving acting a 9 out of 20 score. Chris, you had mentioned a few things with directing. We're gonna move into the directing portion. Specifically, you were referring to David Ayer's directing example and also the editing of the film. I think it's important to realize that the editing of this film was done by a trailer company. And the people who cut movie trailers do so in a very different style or method or manner from people who are film editors. It's a very different skill, it's a very different discipline, and a lot of that showed in this Suicide Squad film. There was a lot of quick cuts, a lot of, like, they focused in on a lot of more of the action and type things, and the pacing just felt wrong. The pacing was off. You were talking about the directing of the actors themselves, and how it just didn't jive. I mean, we're going to get into the writing in just a minute, but like, to your point, they didn't complete the story arc of Harley Quinn in this abusive relationship with the Joker. That's a great point. It's something I hadn't thought of before, but in terms of the directing, the tone was all over the place. They had these really heavy, serious moments, intercut with like these really lighthearted, silly moments. And then when you get into the overall story, like, what is this movie about? It just didn't. Everything fell apart in terms of tone. The lighting, I guess, looked okay. I guess the lighting was fine. The lighting was consistent throughout the movie, so I'll give him that. But yeah, the tone, the editing, the direction, none of this made sense. From a directing standpoint, do you feel differently than I do, or is there anything else that you'd like to point out about how good or how poor the
No,
directing was?
nah. I think I would blame the directing even more than the acting. And the whole thing about tone, like, if you have good actors, I mean, the script's not that good, but the tone and the directing are the things that can elevate it. Because you could make the point that, I mean, Guardians of the Galaxy is kind of a similar ensemble piece. And when James Gunn did the first film, Dave Bautista is not a good actor.
No, he's
Don't
not.
fool yourself. He's gotten to be
He's getting
better
better.
over
He is
time.
getting better.
But this is a guy that came straight out of pro wrestling, had done a few, small films, and he looks like a rock star in that film. And I think because someone understood the character, someone understood the tone, and Batista looks like a rock star. I mean, he's a much better actor now than he was when he
Well,
did the
James
first
Gunn
film.
also
But I
understood
think
his talents. They understood his range. They knew what he could do.
Right.
And so they gave him things to do that were within his capacity of doing.
Yep. It's unfortunate. I don't want to dump it all on the director, but I feel like, yeah. I do think there was studio pressure to do a certain kind of film, but I'm just guessing at that.
Yeah.
But the directing was bad. It didn't work.
So I think Chris and I are in alignment in this regard, which is why directing, we both feel that the directing was worse than the acting. And for those reasons, we are giving directing a 7 out of 20. 7 out of 20. Oof. It's only going to go down from here, you guys. All right. So the writing of the film, this is where it all starts, or rather, this is where it goes awry. The writing of the film can save the film. I mean, you can have bad actors but a great script, or you can have, in this case, really good actors and a bad script. And this is what we got. The story was not cohesive. There was actually, if you look at the whole story of Suicide Squad, there's no reason for this story to exist at all. The whole crux of the story, spoilers, I'm going to tell you the whole thing. Years ago, there was a woman out, she was like an explorer or whatever. She stumbled upon some like demon, spirit, enchantress, whatever. She was possessed by this demon enchantress, and now they call her the Enchantress. Her heart had been cut out, and whoever is in possession of this in the enchantress's heart is in control of her, and so they get to control the magic of whoever is in control of this heart. Well, guess what? Viola Davis, as kind of the one who organized the Suicide Squad, she is the one in possession of this person's heart. How did she get in possession of the heart? Nobody knows. That is never explained, but she is in possession of it. And guess what? Through her own silly, so she wants to create a squad of super powered people to battle, let's say, Superman. Like, the whole thing is based on the premise of thankfully Superman is a good guy, but what if Superman was a bad guy? Who would we get to stop Superman? Which is actually kind of an interesting philosophical question. So they get this team of bad guys together to fight a bad superpower, and to illustrate their point, Viola Davis lets the Enchantress loose in the middle of, was it Gotham City or wherever this happened to be? She let Enchantress loose to do her evil thing so that she could prove her point, to say, see, we need a Suicide Squad. Da 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 da. Mom. There's no reason for the story of this movie to exist, and then we waste time going into the relationship of Joker and Harley Quinn, which, Chris, as you pointed out, there's no reason, well, first of all, there's no reason for those side clips to exist, but they don't finish the story arc. There is no story arc. It's just, hey, I'm in an abusive relationship, da-da-da-da-da-da. It's, the whole thing doesn't make sense. It's a convoluted idea. No. It's not a convoluted idea. It's a convoluted story. It's a great premise. It's a great idea, but they don't do anything with it. They create their own problem and mess everybody's day up on the way. Chris, I just ranted for a minute. What was the story for you, and how did you connect with it?
No, I think you hit everything for me. I mean, there was no story. There were great ideas, but I think tonally it was all just like a long, bad music video. That's the way I kind of looked at the whole film. And you had either really big Easter eggs you were looking forward to that were very surface writing. That's the way it was very done on a very surface level. Or you had really tonal problems when you start dealing with an abusive relationship and someone that's supposed to be a brilliant psychiatrist, in Arkham, and it's written like on a fortune cookie. So that's kind of almost insulting the way they did it with Harley Quinn and the Joker. But then there were like big moments where like Batman talks to Amanda Waller's character that you're looking forward to, but it's all surface and it doesn't mean anything. Deadshot's trying to get his daughter, but it's not deep. I mean, this is where, I really think a lot of, this is all just me guessing, but I think that they didn't understand how to do comic book films in the beginning. And I would also say Batman versus Superman reinforces that. The first Justice League reinforces that. And they didn't know how to do a comic book film. And when they brought in Will Smith, they started thinking that they were going to do some weird Independence Day version of this movie, and everything became slick and surface, and the writing reflected that. And maybe you can also tell, to your point when you first started, that they did a lot of reshoots, they did a lot of rewriting, and it just shows there's nothing inspired by it.
There's no substance.
There's nothing inspiring.
There's no substance to this film whatsoever. Anyway, guys, so with the writing, we're tearing it apart. The story was bad. The dialogue was bad. The scenes themselves were incoherent. They didn't mesh together. All of that put together based on kind of an interesting concept by itself, we're giving writing an overall score of 3 out of 20. This was bad. The story was bad. All right, so let's move on to the takeaway. The takeaway of the movie itself, there were some, when you look at the concept of the Suicide Squad, why does the Suicide Squad exist? What happens if you get another, godlike superhuman with the abilities of Superman? What do you do to stop him? What if Superman is off on Krypton and Batman is hanging out with the, his butler, and Wonder Woman is in Paris fighting her own cheetah villain. Like, who are you going to get to save your corner of the world? This is a really cool idea. I think that's why it works in the comics, because it's a great premise. It's a great idea. And they also execute it well in the comics. They do interesting things. They have a reason for this Suicide Squad to exist. The film did not deliver on the promise, but it is an interesting concept. So the takeaway that just because you're a villain doesn't mean that you can't do good. I like that concept. I like the concept that just because you're a bad guy doesn't mean that you can't do good things. Chris, do you have a different take on this, on kind of like the premise or the overall takeaway of this film, or did none of it work for you?
No, I just think it was a fun popcorn film for whatever, if I'm watching on TV. But I think I love the Suicide Squad as a property. I mean, I was just telling you, we were talking before that I finally got around to seeing Assault on Arkham, which is an animated film, and Suicide Squad Batman. It's fantastic. The idea of actually having heroes in a situation where you know people are going to die out of the group is very compelling.
Right.
And you want that. And even you kind of brought this up a couple of times, and it goes to me, which is a bit of a fundamental flaw with the film, that if you're creating a film about villains that could take on Superman, no one in that group would last 5 seconds with Superman except for the Enchantress, who's a villain. So no one else could even – Superman would go through the whole run of them in 15 seconds. In the Justice League film, everyone in the Justice League, you know, the person that you would say can't go against Superman is Batman, but basically Batman is smart enough to where he could at least give him a fight. Everybody in the Justice League could give Superman a fight. No one in the Suicide Squad could give Superman a real fight. I mean, Harley Quinn and Deadpool wouldn't last 5 seconds with Superman. So,
You mean Deadshot?
I mean, whatever, he gets Deadshot. Sorry, he gets kryptonite bullets. But I just think at a core, you have a pretty long lineage of people that have been in the Suicide Squad. Just even if you want to put together who you want to put together, I mean, Captain Boomerang is just not going to cut it. I mean, it's fine to put him in the film, but he can't fight Superman, you know. So
I'm just picturing like Captain Boomerang throw his boomerangs at Superman, and just like they just bounce off, and like, what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? Quip? What do you got? Anyway, guys, so our overall takeaway, I didn't think it was the worst concept in the world. I thought it was a decent concept. It just was not executed very well. That's why we're going to put the overall takeaway as a 10 out of 20. And our last category to rate this film is effectiveness. How effective was the movie? Did they hit their mark? Did they accomplish what they wanted to accomplish with Suicide Squad? I mean, we all know nobody sets out to make a bad movie. Nobody does that. That's a ridiculous concept. Well, maybe unless you're Tommy Wiseau. But nobody wants to make a bad movie unless you're Lloyd Kaufman. But nobody, I'm just going to keep listing like bad directors. Nobody wants to make a bad property because they want to make money. They want to be loved. They want to be celebrated. Director David Ayer did not make a bad movie on purpose. He was given a bad script. He was put in a really compromising position. He himself did not deliver very well. I don't know. Like, I feel like this is the kind of film that should have been fun. This was supposed to be DC's answer to Guardians of the Galaxy. This was supposed to be DC's answer to like a fun, lighthearted action adventure movie, and I for one think that it fell so short of the mark. Chris, do you have different thoughts? Did it fall shorter?
I guess it depends on how you want to look at effectiveness. I think based on the way you framed it, yeah, it obviously fell short of the mark in terms of being effective enough to where, you know, if somebody were going to watch it on TV, I'd say watch it. Just, you know, leave your brain in your pocket. Yeah. And it's effective enough to get a sequel. So they did enough to justify to get a sequel out of it. So I don't know. I mean, we're splitting small points, but I might have given it one or two more points than we were talking before, you know. But that's about it.
Well, in that case, with overall effectiveness, you guys, we are giving the score a 4 out of 20. 4 out of 20. Chris, I feel like you, in your last comments, were about to give it maybe a couple of more points. Do you think 4 out of 20 is too low?
I might have given it a 5 or a 6, because here's what they did do. Like, if I'm sitting around, I'm trying to pitch my sequel.
Yeah.
Okay. I would say, look, we did well enough that we got a Harley Quinn movie out of it, based on the same character. That's something. That's not nothing.
Yeah.
And we did enough to justify a sequel, and people want to see that sequel. And I thought that they did, even though, man, I could argue that the writing's not great, they did at least justify why Deadpool would be the one to save the day. And it did have at least some plausibility. Deadshot. Why do I keep saying, oh, sorry, Dead. I know why I keep doing that, because Deadpool's a different character. Deadshot. I just said, what if Deadpool were in there? And he can never die.
I mean, he's a fourth wall breaker. Why not?
Yeah, so Deadshot, they came up with some reason to make it work. And I'm forgetting the name of the character, but it did have little moments of heart with the character that could embody flame.
Diablo.
So, Diablo. So there was something there. And the acting in moments was passable. You know, it just wasn't great. So I don't know. I might have given it 5 or 6, but out of 20, that's still sad.
I know, right?
So.
Yeah. Well, Chris is going to give it a higher score, a little bit higher score than 4 out of 20. But I'm sticking with a hard 4 out of 20. He brings up some great points. So guys, that brings our overall score for this for Suicide Squad 2016 to.
Well, now you see, I not say one thing, mister, before when you... No, honest? Go!
That's right, a 33 out of 100. 33 out of 100. Is that fair? Is that not fair? I feel that that's pretty much on the mark. 33 out of 100 for an overall score. Chris, do you think that that's fair?
I think it's a third of a film. So, yeah, I mean, a third of what Suicide Squad could have been. So, yeah, it's
there. It is. 33 out of 100. So that is our review of Suicide Squad. Yeah, there you go. Take it or leave it. Do you have different thoughts on Suicide Squad? Do you think that it was a better film than what Chris and I are giving it credit for? Jump on down to the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. All right, guys.